Good morning, everybody. Thank you guys so much for waking up early to get here. My name is Payton-Stevens. I play cello with the Seattle Symphony. There's no job quite like that of a professional orchestral musician, but until you're on the inside, the profession can be shrouded in a bit of mystery. So we figured we would go right to the source and take a peek behind the curtain a little bit. And so this morning we're going to be talking a bit about auditions, the day-to-day on-the-job routines of an orchestral musician, and the changes that we've noticed in the industry that are coming on the horizon, among other things. We'll also leave a bit of time for questions and answers at the end of the session, so anything that comes up, anything you think that the panel might be able to help you out with, that's what we're here for. We are Slido equipped, so you know what to do. All right, I'll let each of the panelists introduce themselves. Beverly, would you like to start off?
Yes, good morning. My name is Beverly Kane Baker, and I'm principal viola with the Virginia Symphony. I'm in my 36th year. I have a special relationship with the symphony in that I heard them as a little girl at age 9. It was called the Norfolk Symphony at that time, and I've been playing the violin for about 3 years, and I heard that concert, and I went home and I told my mom that I want to play in an orchestra just like that, Mommy. And she said, that's okay. She said, okay, that's wonderful. But through a series of events, when I was in high school, I had the opportunity to sit in the back of the section and learn about playing in an orchestra. And through another series of events, I was back in the area in 1983, and I auditioned for the symphony with a section job, and I auditioned for the principal job in 1994, and I still have that position today.
Hi, clapping. I'm Alex Kerr. I'm concertmaster of the Dallas Symphony Orchestra and professor at IU at Jacobs School of Music. Prior to this, I was concertmaster. My first job was in Charleston, South Carolina, where I was for 2 years. Then I was concertmaster in Cincinnati, the symphony there, for 2 years. And then I went to Amsterdam to be concertmaster of the Royal Concertgebouw Orchestra, where I was concertmaster for 10 years. And then I came back to the States, and I'm also principal guest concertmaster of the Indianapolis Symphony. So it's kind of a whirlwind life, but it's I think I became interested in orchestral playing. I've always loved the repertoire itself, but I think my biggest influence was when I saw a video of my old orchestra, the Concertgebouw Orchestra, under the baton of Carlos Kleiber, and I remember seeing that video thinking, wow, this is what this repertoire can be. And from then on, I was hooked.
Good morning, I'm Ken Thompkins. I'm principal trombonist of the Detroit Symphony. This is my 22nd year in the orchestra. I'm originally from the Annapolis area, and if anyone's familiar with that area, there's tons and tons and tons of musicians and music everywhere through the military ensembles, as well as Annapolis Symphony, Baltimore Symphony, National Symphony, and other regional orchestras. So even at the time when I was growing up, there was even a professional full-time brass quintet, the Annapolis Brass Quintet. So when I was growing up, there was just music everywhere and lots of opportunities to perform as a young person. And I went to Northwestern University and studied with people in the Chicago Symphony, and that's, like once you hear something of that caliber on a constant basis, it's just, elevated my expectations for myself. And, I was like, wow, I really want to pursue orchestral music.
Good morning, I am Peter Webster. I am not a musician, although I do play a good tambourine if you don't need to keep time. I, however, do serve on the Board of Trustees for the New Jersey Symphony Orchestra. So my job is to ensure that the orchestra is financially sound for the sustainability of the work. My regular work is I am the regional managing director for a company called Aon. We're a global risk and human capital consulting firm, and I liken my job as a people leader to that of a conductor, making sure that everyone is heard, and that if people are too loud, I tell them to shh. And if I'll coax the folks that maybe are too quiet, because everyone, similar to an orchestra, is necessary and is definitely part of the team. So thank you for having me.
Thank you guys for those introductions. So let's kick things off just talking about the day-to-day routine of being an orchestral musician. What is that like?
I have 3 words for you if you want to be successful in a symphony job. The first would be organize, the second would be schedule, and the third would be balance. You have to stay ahead of your symphony schedule, and you have to learn how to incorporate that with your life. Right now, I have 4 folders of music at home waiting for me, and an opera part that I have to do within a period of maybe 3 weeks. So I need to know what I'm rehearsing, when I'm rehearsing, and I also have to schedule practice time, and that's sometimes hard. And if you aren't a morning person, I am a morning person, but if you aren't, then you may need to be a little more creative with your scheduling of practice time, maybe late at night sometimes. But I am an early morning person. If you like to work out and do other kind of things in your life, which is very important, that balance part, make sure you do other things outside of the symphony job, because you can easily get burnt out on the symphony job. So do other things as well.
Is that something the rest of you guys have noticed? Burnout, balance, outside projects. How have you guys handled that?
You know, it's funny. My career was such that I designed it in a way after a man named Joseph Gingold, who was one of my greatest influences. I always wanted to do everything. I wanted to play chamber music, I wanted to play in the orchestra, and I wanted to teach. So I echo what you're saying about scheduling. My schedule is insane. And it's a case of be careful what you wish for, you just may get it.
Right.
Well, I got everything I wanted, but the problem is I have to schedule all of it. So not only do I have to think about how much I practice, how much I'm able to, I have to teach during the day, all of the rehearsals and the concert schedules, but also you have to schedule in exercise. Because your body, at your age, right, or at young people's age, I was seeing a lot of young people, your body's fine right now. But when you get to our age, little owies start to hurt for a while. And so I think you really have to balance that out of having time to prepare for everything that you have to prepare for, and then actually perform what you're having to perform, and then at the same time be able to take care of your body so that it doesn't fail on you, because it's so difficult to keep up the kind of grueling schedule.
Yeah, I completely agree. And just really having that realization that orchestral career and teaching career, all that stuff, chamber music is great, but it's part of your life. It's not your entire life. And just having that balance of outside activities, exercising, spiritual life, friends, vacations,
Yes.
that's all good and necessary. And as to what Beverly was talking about, like here in Detroit, for starting this coming week, we're going to do a 3-week American Music Festival with 2 different programs each week. So, the preparation for this festival had to start quite a while ago. So if I'm just starting to prepare now, this week, for a 3-week festival, I'm behind. If your preparation consists of listening to a symphony you're gonna perform, and that's it, you listen to it once, you're not really prepared. Or if you're just playing through your part and you're like, oh, that's it. No, that's not it. You have to really commit yourself to a deeper level of commitment to the music and knowledge, which all takes time. So you have to really schedule and you have to allow yourself to be successful by giving yourself that time.
It's funny, as a board member, it's awesome to hear what it takes to really facilitate the production, right? So we talked about this yesterday. They're amazing, by the way. Personally, they're awesome. So we were talking about this yesterday, and I'm just looking at ticket sales. You have a new program, you did Star Wars. We just did Star Wars, and it was amazingly successful. So as a board member, you see the money coming in, and you're like, wow, let's do E.T. next week. Let's do Coming to America the following week, not realizing that, it takes a lot of work to prepare to get there. So it's wonderful to learn.
So, what you guys are talking about is being a successful orchestral musician. It sounds like you're being a good colleague. You don't want to let your other team members down by not being prepared. What are some other aspects of being a good colleague? Alex, looks like you want.
No,
go,
I'll
please,
let
Beverly.
Alex go first. You can go first.
No, I think that being a good colleague, number one, being prepared. Knowing your part inside and out so that you're not holding anybody else back. Two, treating an orchestra like chamber music. Really treating it as if we're all playing together and we're all aware all the time. And I think that preparation helps towards that, because if you are prepared, then you can be more aware of everything that's going on around you. And I think that's really important. I think what happens if you come in and you're scared and you're not really knowing what you're doing, you become like completely myopic. You just have the, it's like the horse and with the blinders on. And it's too difficult to really enjoy the experience. I think the more prepared you are, the more you can enjoy it. Right. And for me, also, when it comes down to even personalizing it, like being personal towards your other colleagues, I live by one rule, which is never say anything about anybody that you wouldn't say to their face. And I think that's a great rule. I mean, the golden rule is, of course, the easiest way to live when you're in any situation. But I think for me, I always have that feeling of just treating my colleagues like my dearest friends, and even the ones I don't like.
Yeah, I agree completely. Often you'll hear musicians talk about they want to be respected, but you have to be respectful to be respected. And the golden rule, everything your mama taught you when you were a kid, it still applies when you're a grown up. Don't forget it. Treat people how you want to be treated. Be the change you want to be. It's if you can't follow those rules, you're gonna have some problems. I mean, it's really kind of simple.
I was just going to say, as a principal player, I try to make sure that I stay in touch with my section, and not just at work, but if they have something going on in their lives, that maybe they have a sick kid, or something like that, I say, please come to me, not just with musical things, but if you're going through something, I need to know that, and if I can help you with that, I'd also do that as well.
That's very sweet. So is there anything tenure process specific that you guys have noticed? Perhaps there's some people in the room who are very close to getting through the tenure process. What are some do's or don'ts that you guys have come across in your vast experiences?
Wow, I would say for somebody who's going through their tenure process, for all of you who need to know what the tenure process is once you get to the job, you have about a year to 2 years, sometimes in orchestras in Europe, like the Berlin Philharmonic, it's 3 years, to basically prove yourself that you're worthy of the job to keep a tenured position. In that time, I would suggest to people, first thing I suggest to all my students is just be a good citizen. Like really show up, not just on time, early, and way early.
Yes.
2, come always prepared. 3, again, don't say anything to anybody that you wouldn't say to their face. Within that, I think of this, there are always people that like to gossip. Anytime you get 120 people on stage, it's going to end up being kindergarten. And so there are always people that like to talk. Don't be part of that process. I advise you, until you hear the word tenure given to you and bestowed upon you, you are a guest in someone else's house. And treat that house as a guest. Everything is wonderful. The world is a beautiful place, even though that conductor is not a nice person. They're great for you at that moment because they gave you a job. That would be my advice to people.
Yes, no, come to work prepared and come early. I'm sorry. Wind players and brass players, you can maybe address that. I don't think they would even think of strolling in 10 till 10 o'clock.
Nope.
Because they have to blow into their instrument and the mouthpiece and the reeds and all these kinds of things going on. String players, sometimes we have a little more leeway, but I would say that first year, get there at least 30 minutes or early so that you can make that impression. Yeah, that's important.
I would say just in general, when you're new in the situation you're trying to get tenure, just keep your eyes open and your ears open and pretty much your mouth shut. And attend to what you need to attend to, which is really being on time, being prepared, and playing great. And being personable and friendly to your colleagues, so they have trust in you. and it's all about relationships and trust, besides performing well. And because people want, they want colleagues, people they can trust.
Respect the gift in each other, I would say, just in a general sense. Everyone has a specific gift, and respect that gift. You know, there's a difference between confidence and arrogance, and it's easily seen and felt. So just respect the gift.
Wonderful, I love it.
That's a great thing to say, actually. There's a difference between confidence and arrogance. That is
small
very
difference.
important.
Yes.
So one thing that I was a little surprised about when I joined an orchestra was all the committees that that the musicians organize for themselves to address different aspects of the organization. What are some universal committees that you guys have in your orchestras to participate in?
Well, there's the orchestra committee is usually formed to help the musicians state their, I don't know what word to use, but if there are any kind of issues with contract, things like that. But we also just started a social media committee. There's an artistic committee, and I think those are our three.
Sometimes you have liaison committees.
Yeah, liaison committees.
Yeah, there's representatives from the musicians that are on the board and various board committees here in Detroit. And as far as the orchestra committee is concerned here, it really is a facilitating body to make sure that the collective bargaining agreement is upheld on both sides. So it really is a protection, not just for the musicians, but for the management and the whole organization as well. Because everyone wants everyone else to be successful. It can't be an adversarial relationship between the musicians, management, and board. And so, it's kind of like we have these different checks to make sure the engine's running smoothly.
And we also have a diversity, equality, and inclusion commission or division of our board. And there are different musicians that sit on every aspect of the board. And it's great. And we're actually matched up. Each board member is matched up with a musician so that we understand the life of a musician.
Wonderful. And also the musicians have access to what the board does in advocacy for the orchestra. It's wonderful.
What's amazing, actually, to see your colleagues who, after a while, have been on these committees for quite a long time, how mastered they are in these certain subjects. There's one of our violas, David Siwat, who just knows healthcare more than any other human being I've ever met. It's incredible. I mean, so I would say to the people that are getting into orchestras, wait a little while before you get on these committees. Get your feet wet with the orchestra first. Get everything down, because it does get easier. I have to say, like the whole repertoire thing and the preparation thing, for me, having played in an orchestra for 25 plus years, it does get easier when you play Bruckner 7 3 times, or 4 times, or 5 times. Yeah, the preparation's a little bit easier, I have to say, than the first time when I'm cramming every week, trying to get everything in. It does get easier, and then give yourself some time to get your feet wet before you jump into this stuff.
So 27 years, 25 years, or did I just get that backwards? 25, 27, 30 years.
36.
36 years, my gosh.
Yeah.
That's a long time to be doing any one thing. What is it that you guys still love about orchestra?
I love sitting on stage and having that goofy grin that you get when that part comes. It's like Rachmaninoff's second piano concerto at the end of the slow movement. There's this beautiful violin section, and I can hear it in my head. And every time I hear it, I tear up. Just real sappy like that. But I love it. I still love it. And if you don't love it, don't go into an orchestra job. You really have to really want it and love it. I know that sounds kind of basic, but I still love it. I still love it.
I go into every rehearsal. I love my job. I'm really lucky. I've loved every job I've ever had, and I've always looked at it that way. I've always been very happy everywhere I was until I went to the next job. And I think every job that I had prepared me for the next one. I love it. I love playing an orchestra. I love the communal aspect of it, of playing chamber music on a sort of a grand scale. I like my job personally, my concertmaster job. I like facilitating and leading people. I think it's part of my personality. And I love the repertoire. I love the Red. We were talking about
Yes,
Brahms. You were
yes.
talking about Brahms 4
Brahms
yesterday.
4 yesterday,
And
yes.
for me,
Burning
that's
out.
I could play that every day for the rest of my life.
Yes.
Every day for the rest of my life. And I think the problem is that, you know, there's this old joke that goes around musicians, and it's like, how do you tick off a musician? Employ them. And that's a problem. I think, you know, if you have an attitude, I always tell this to my students who are getting jobs, and I always tell them, remember this feeling when you got your job. Remember it for the rest of your life, because we always somehow have amnesia about like that win that we got, and we finally achieved our goal. And then suddenly, within 5 weeks, they're whining. It's like, guys, this is what you wanted. And really, it's a fun job. This is one of the most fun jobs you'll ever have.
Yeah,
Kenneth, what is it that you love?
it's fantastic. It's a fantastic profession, a calling. For me, I really love the communal aspect of it, in that, you know, you're playing this music, some of it new, most of it quite old, but it's something that you approach in a ritualistic manner, and that everyone's experiencing this at the same time, you know. And just the very fact that you enter into this space and it starts quiet, you know, that ritual, and then you're experiencing this. This is very spiritual in a sense, and that you're communicating, you know, there's no words a lot of times. You're just communicating, you're looking at someone. And I just really enjoy the whole process of it and the music itself. And then just hearing my colleagues just play the crap out of something. just shred it. And I'm like, uh-oh, gotta step it up. You know, it's just so enjoyable. I mean, I really just love my colleagues and love the music. It's fantastic.
Wonderful. And Peter, outside of your tambourine experience, I'm not sure that you have much musical experience. What drew you to being on the board? Why are you doing this?
So, first of all, for the sustainability of the work, we were talking about this earlier. I think in our community specifically, it's really not as diverse as it should be. There's not really a heightened awareness of orchestral work amongst the various elements of our community. So I want to bring that enlightenment to various areas of our community by inviting them, by getting their money so that you guys can still do your job. Right. And honestly, I just honor your call. You know, what you guys have chosen to do in the life that you've chosen is not an easy one, right? But you have such a gift that I can't bring, like I said, I can play a tambourine, but I cannot play Brahms. You know, I can enjoy it. It evokes so much emotion. It makes me feel amazing. I just wrote an article and I said that, you know, classical music is like a novel without words, and how a conductor and musicians can evoke so much from me just by playing. I honor that, so I want to see that furthered. So.
It's funny, every orchestra, I think, has its stories about like things that happen that make you realize just how special the gig is and what it can be. There was one time where in my old orchestra in Amsterdam, the Concertgebouw Orchestra, we were on tour in a very prominent festival, and the lights just went out. We were playing Mahler 6, and we were like probably about 5 minutes away from the end of the first movement, and the lights just went out. And everything, it was pitch dark. You couldn't see a thing. And we finished the movement. Like 5 minutes we played by heart. Completely by heart. And stayed together, no conductor, no anything. And the lights came back on, and all of us looked at each other, and just the grins on our faces, like that were just like, now that was amazing. That's why you do the gig.
Right.
Nice. So it's not exactly an elephant in the room. In fact, it's kind of what this entire conference is about. There's a lack of diversity in our industry. But there are some changes on the horizon that I've been noticing, and I wanted to discuss that a little bit. What have you guys been seeing in terms of efforts to kind of change that story a little bit?
Well, just across the country, there's been this sprouting of fellowship programs for different orchestras. Here in Detroit, we've had a fellowship program since the late 80s, and we've had some people have success in various orchestras, including myself, since I did a fellowship program in the early 90s. And so now Pittsburgh, LA, Minnesota, Chicago. I'm probably leaving some out.
Houston, Cincinnati.
Houston, Cincinnati. Yeah, so these are popping up and giving just wonderful opportunities for musicians to improve their skills. And it's fantastic, just to have that on stage experience with professional orchestras and get your feet wet. But it has to be said that you have to be ready for that experience. You can't show up and not be ready, or else you're going to have a bad experience. Be careful for what you wish for if you're not ready for it.
I think just more people from minority backgrounds are finally starting to play classical music. Really, I think they have enough role models now in this that more people are playing, and you'll see more success. It's when it comes to like women in power positions of conducting, more women are doing it. They have more role models. You see it happening. And yes, there are programs that are helping this diversity, but I think now that more people are actually doing it, you're going to see that success. And I'm so happy to see that, because and especially seeing the students here that are playing in the competition, to see the level that these kids are playing at. Wow, and just pride, lots of pride.
And there's also many more community-based programs for younger students, as in elementary and middle school students, to learn instruments and perform. And some of these programs, well, many of them are more community-based and STEAM and community building programs. There's one program here in Detroit, Orchestral Detroit, that it's about community building and building up the person and exposing them to the arts, and just giving them lots of opportunities and experiences.
We're doing the same in Dallas right now.
Yeah.
It's a huge. We're going into different parts of town that are underappreciated when it comes to the education and the arts, and having a huge outreach. And it's really already, you can see the difference already, even though it's in its infancy. You can see the difference in what's going on.
Well, this is why I'm so proud to be on the New Jersey Symphony Orchestra, and shout out to the CEO who's here, Gabriel Van Alst, who's doing a phenomenal job. We're very intentional about bringing diversity to the board and to the stage. And actually, our donors are actually intentional about it as well. So we get specific endowments to make sure that we are fulfilling that. And one of the things that we had mentioned is we've got this amazing female conductor, Shen Zhang, and she's actually doing the Chinese New Year tonight and celebrating that, and with 100 young vocalists on stage, and completely sold out. Amazing. But one of the musicians on the board, as with change comes change, right? So everybody's not ready for it. It sounds great, but some people can feel uncomfortable with change. And one of the things that one of our musicians had said, a female musician, when Shen came and was conducting, I kind of felt uncomfortable being under a woman conductor. And I didn't know why, but I did. And she's transcended that. But sometimes we have an unconscious bias that we really don't even understand until we're actually presented with those changes. So it's interesting to see how the evolution of that.
That is very interesting.
We were talking yesterday about auditions.
Yeah.
About how that's changing. And I think now the fact that a lot of orchestras are moving towards having screens up the entire time, not just in the earlier rounds, but also through the finals, and placing a greater importance on the tenure process, and also having trial weeks. I think that's also having an influence upon not just towards minorities, but also to women. I think that's incredibly important. I think that people are really realizing at this point that that's a necessity going forward. It's not even just something that we'd like to do. It's really important to do.
I take it that's how your orchestra handles auditions, fully screened?
Yeah, fully screened all the way to the end. And I think that's incredibly important. I think what you've seen is that it's enlightening, actually, to see how auditions end up because of that. And also it helps people that are in the orchestra as well, because it's always the most difficult to come from within to a principal chair And I think that it's fair to everybody, to those outside, to those from different diverse backgrounds, and to women, but also to people who are in the orchestra.
We actually make sure that we have a rug so that we can't hear how a person is walking, because somebody might be wearing heels, somebody might be wearing flats, so we don't need to know, we don't need that, so we've actually put a rug down so that we don't know if it's a man or woman, black,
Yeah,
white.
we do similar things here in Detroit. It's screened. It's screened all the way unless the music director requests, besides a super final round, and he has to specifically request that the screen come down, then the committee has to agree to it.
I think that's silly,
Yeah.
honestly. I think that's silly.
That was
Those I really feel.
a new well, that was a new wrinkle.
Well, it's
Maybe
wonderful.
we'll get that one ironed out with
Yeah.
the new music director.
Exactly.
It's nice to hear that that's the direction that things are moving.
Yeah.
So we have about 20 minutes left in the session. I do want to leave enough time for questions and answers. Thank you so much. Go ahead and submit some questions via Slido. We have a few microphones around. Go ahead and come on up, whatever you would like to do. And we'll try and get to some questions. Okay. Let me just take 1 second to get caught up here. Okay.
Oh, there are people standing up.
Okay.
I
That's
know.
great.
Wow.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and start with you there in the colorful shirt.
Hi. I was wondering if any of you can speak about your experience auditioning for a new orchestra job while you're in a current orchestra and how you balance that. Because that's something I'm definitely struggling with right now.
I haven't done that.
Yeah, I would say number one, I like to wait until I sort of have my foot in tenure before I start auditioning in other places. It's just a little good advice. But if you don't, I would say this. This is where your body is very important. Be very careful. I would say leave yourself enough time. This is where Beverly's talking about scheduling. Is really important, because you do need to give yourself enough time for your body to relax in between rehearsals and the next thing that you do. So exercise, stretch, but make sure you have at least a few hours in between and organize your practicing. I would say this: don't practice mistakes. Be very methodical about how you practice. Practice slowly, excerpts that you already know. Practice easily and slowly, excerpts that you don't know. Make sure you don't practice mistakes, because the problem is that we unnecessarily do too many repetitions, especially as string players, and it hurts you overall. And when you have that many rehearsals and that much going on, you have to really protect yourself. So really try to emphasize practicing methodically rather than just cramming. The more you practice slowly, the more that you're going to get out of the practice session, and useless repetitions won't help you.
Yeah, that's a good word. Every now and then, it works out nice if the orchestra job that you have is playing the same works that are on the audition list. And sometimes that does happen. So hopefully Don Juan is on that week, and then you can just go and play Don Juan at the audition the following week. That helps in preparation. Every now and then it does.
Did you mean physical preparation?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh,
You're a string player?
Yes.
I have no words for you.
But as a brass player, it's also about your lip, protecting your lip too. I mean, that's.
Yeah, I mean, what you said was perfect. Just slow and methodical. You don't practice mistakes. That's just hardwiring mistakes. And then, once you start taking auditions and you're having success, there's things that that take some time to prepare, and then there's things that you pretty much have under your fingers that aren't going to take too much time to prepare. So you have to figure out, okay, Don Juan or Heldenleben or whatever you're going to play. You end up playing, I need to really work on this. And the other things, not so much. And just really be methodical about it.
I find also that, it's funny, one of my good friends is a violinist named James Ennis, and Jimmy has this thing, every orchestra that plays with him, they always wonder, how does somebody like that practice? And they actually have asked him, how do you practice? And it's like asking Kareem Abdul-Jabbar what it feels like to be tall. You know, it's like, how did he get so good? And I can tell you, I've sat next to him practicing, and there's nothing amazing about it. He just doesn't practice mistakes. He practices, he doesn't repeat things until he knows exactly how he wants to play it. And I would emphasize, as a string player, emphasize working on your fundamentals while you're practicing. Like, work on the finger weights, making sure that things are confident. Work on just literally the height of your arm away from things, because one thing that happens to us while we're preparing, we tend to close up and get afraid. Practice your fundamentals through the excerpts, because keep your chops up, basically. And it'll help a lot.
Scales.
Yeah.
While we're talking about preparation, I have a question here through Slido. Any thoughts on a strict audition regimen or routine? Do you think that they work, or do you just jump right into the list? Just very briefly, did you have an audition regimen, or was it just sort of, sound good?
It's been long. I haven't auditioned in 30 or so years, so I don't think I can address that.
What you're talking about as far as having your fundamental sound is so key. When you're taking your auditions and you're playing on the stage by yourself, everything is so transparent that the fundamentals, if they're weak, they show, right away. It's just, if you're not, really, if you can't get through a difficult etude successfully, you really shouldn't expect yourself to play at a very, very high level with excerpts, which are just so concentrated and so short for the most part that they have to have that sparkle and foundation to them. But as far as having an audition routine, besides practicing slowly, like once the material is very familiar and you have it under your fingers, just doing a lot of mock auditions and taking notes, recording myself, scoring, taking notes, reviewing, and then practicing the materials that didn't sound good. And I would do that day after day after day after day after day. I did that for years.
Yes, I was just going to say one thing. When I'm listening to auditions as far as string playing, work on having a beautiful sound, because even if you have all of this and your sound isn't a warm sound, sometimes that can be disjunct there. And so I can't get past the sound to hear your good rhythm and all of these other things involved.
Yeah, I think that you have to really make me feel like I'm comfy. That's your job as an auditioner. I have to feel like I can play next to you at any time, and I have to feel like I'm in my comfy chair. Like I'm in a lazy boy, and I'm like, wow, this person just makes me feel at ease. And I think the one thing that we forget is what makes something difficult. What makes something difficult is it's harder to maintain our fundamentals through the difficulties. So that's the most important thing, is to practice your fundamentals through the difficulties. Once you can maintain that, easy, really.
Yeah, and for brass players, just be aware that maintaining a beautiful sound is so important, and maintaining a dynamic, even if it's just fortissimo or louder, that you're not going to scare people. That's it's one of the, you have to keep in mind that a lot of times these audition committees are made up of people that aren't brass players, and if they hear roughness or edginess in the sound, you get that creeveway. It scares people, and they think, well, all this person's going to do is play loud, and I don't want to hear that, and they automatically turn their ears off, and you're done. And so you have to really be aware of who you're playing for, and play sensitively. Have a wide dynamic range, but you're not going to town.
So just be flexible and be perfect.
Pretty much.
Go ahead.
Good morning. I was wondering if one of you or all of you could speak more in depth about score study, especially for programs that you've maybe never played before, or contemporary music where there maybe aren't recordings that exist yet.
It isn't easy. I would say when I come up to a piece of music, I always like to listen to it. That's one of the first things I usually do, is just get an overview of listening to it. And usually I'll find a recording that I find is very good. If there are no recordings, studying the score, first of all, you have to get your library to to sort of like give you the information, or there might be stuff online that you can find. In general, when I look at a score, I mean, if you don't have access to a piano, sometimes I like to go on a piano and just look through things and just get an idea of harmonically. But quite often, I like to look at the notations, look at what the notations mean themselves, and just even sing it to yourself. Like have an idea of just singing the rhythms to yourself, putting it to a metronome next to you at the you know, because especially with contemporary repertoire, there's always going to be metronome markings. Look at them at what they're writing, see if there are patterns involved. Always look for patterns. But also just have a metronome, get the rhythm there, get the notes there, start with that. From there, I mean, when you're playing in an orchestra at least, the part of the conductor's job is to basically have a vision for what that piece is going to sound like. So you can basically come with the basics of rhythm, intonation, basic sound, basic, you know, looking at what kind of things you have to achieve when it comes to just the weird stuff, you know, like is this going to be Ponticello, is this going to be this, or is this going to be that? And just come with the basics so that you don't hurt your colleagues. It's hard to get a complete vision of something that's never existed, you know? That's what I would say for especially for new repertoire. But just come in with the basics ready so that the conductor can form that vision. Yeah.
I'll just read one quick question from here. The quest to increase onstage diversity involves dramatic change for the orchestral industry. How can musicians make that change from within the system?
What's the first part of that?
The quest to increase onstage diversity involves dramatic change for the orchestral industry. So, what can musicians do from within the system to help support that? Or what have they done?
You know, it's funny, I think what Sphinx and New World worked together, where we were part of the whole audition process about audition training, and I think that's one way to start. I think, first of all, orchestra is doing basically what all these orchestras are doing, about having diversity initiatives within getting into the public school systems. And from there, I would say what people are getting the diversity fellowships is another way. Again, basically having the auditions in sort of run in a different way. But I would say, as musicians, having things like what happened with New World and Sphinx, having giving the opportunities for people to see what it's like to audition, to train them to audition, to put them in the right positions in order to succeed. I think that's what we're doing. I think Sphinx is a hell of an organization doing that. I think that what I've seen since I've been here is amazing. It's just amazing.
And I think, you know, networking. If you're a young musician and you're on the trail, you're auditioning, you know, don't be afraid to contact Alex Kerr or someone and go play for them.
Yes.
And, you know, you can't hide your light under a bushel. You have to get out there and let people know you exist. Just because you go to X conservatory doesn't mean people know who you are. And people have to know and be aware that you even exist, and get out and play for people and get these different experiences. And furthermore, people like us in our positions, I have friends that teach in different universities and play in different orchestras, and we talk and we're like, hey, this person's coming up, you should really look out for this person. And we talk and we encourage these younger musicians, and because we want to see them do well, we want to see a more diverse presence on stage and in our audiences. So I think just creating more of a network so we can openly communicate and just look out for one another, I think that will just raise the level overall.
Can I submit giving back? Once you've obtained tenure, go and help someone else. Mentor a young person from your neighborhood. Encourage people. I think people become so into themselves, they forget to give back. One of the things that I look at for leaders is who's giving back voluntarily once they've actually made it. Are you reaching back to your community? Or are you just very self-centered? It will actually help you flourish within your own development, but also you'll bring that diversity to the stage.
Pay it forward.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Hi, My name is John Horzen. I'm a violinist, and kind of that last question really segues well into what I was planning on asking. In the 2014-2015 concert season, there's a recently aggregated, recently updated study of the 82 works by American-born composers played by the top 21 orchestras in the U.S. This was compiled by the Baltimore Symphony. 100% of those, the people who composed those works, were white. So, speaking as a hopefully performer inside, hopefully at some point inside the system, what are some things that I can do? I know earlier we were talking about, hey, keep your head down, your nose, everything about you clean, wait until you have tenure. But once you have tenure, are there ways that you can leverage your position to push for more diverse rep?
Get on the artistic committee. That would be your first step. Yeah, absolutely.
Play different repertoire. Really. I mean, I actually commissioned a piece by a prominent Jewish composer in the States, a concerto by him. You can also commission people, different people. I mean, whether it's women or people who are of minorities. I mean, I think commissioning people, getting the orchestra to commission people that are of diverse backgrounds is very important. And getting on the artistic committee to do so helps.
Yeah, I completely agree. Having the ear of the artistic advisor, or whoever does the artistic programming in your organization, and having those friendly conversations and, come up with a list of your wish list of composers that you'd like to see your orchestra perform their works, and be insistent, in a friendly way. Like, wouldn't this be great if we played X piece by X composer, and just bring it up and talk about it, and start talking about it so it's not foreign material. So the more you talk about it, the more it's talked about.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Go ahead.
So I just had a question for those of you who said that your orchestras have screens up even in the final round. How do you deal with chamber music if that is a part of your audition process? In the SOPA talks the other day, we were just discussing how that is kind of potentially the only valid reason for the screens to come down still. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, if the screens are up during the audition, I don't understand why the screen. I mean, I guess whoever's playing chamber music with that person is going to know who they are. But I think you can actually maintain the anonymity even in that situation. I think in a chamber music round, what you're trying to see is how somebody really involves themselves in the group, how they interact with people. But you can hear that with sound too. I mean, I don't need to look at the person to see if they're not playing with somebody, you don't have to see the person looking around. In fact, there are lots of people that I know that don't really look around at other people. I do, but other people don't. But their ears are open. I don't think that the screen needs to come down. I really don't.
Just to clarify, do you mean that the candidate should play with non-voting members of the committee in the chamber music round?
Yeah,
Okay.
I believe that the candidate should play with non-voting members. I mean, I think that honestly, I think you need to keep it anonymous. I think that, yes, playing behind a screen is weird. I think for the person playing and for the people listening. For the people listening, I was just talking about this last night. You have to understand, it's so weird to be listening to somebody without seeing them, because it heightens, it's like being blind. It heightens every other awareness to the point where every mistake pops out like an explosion. So it's I mean, really, what we do to you guys in this process is unreasonable. It is completely unreasonable. Yet it's the only one we have. So I would say, yeah, I don't think that the screen needs to come down. I really don't. I think that if you're going to listen to somebody, you're listening to how they react in a situation. If they're playing with their colleagues, there is plenty of time in a trial week or in a tenure process to get an idea of how people look when they play, how they interact with people when they play. I just think that we haven't used those processes in the right way. I'm sorry, but I think that like a tenure process, it's not just like to see, can we have coffee with the person? No, it's to see how they actually interact in a group. And I think that we are just too easily ready to give somebody a job and just say, once they win the job, then they're in. No, that's what a tenure process is for.
Yeah, in general, if there's going to be like a string quartet or chamber music element of an audition, it's really better to wait till the trial week.
Yeah.
Wait till the trial week to have that go on.
Okay, we have time for one more question, and it already has to be a rapid fire question. I think you've been standing there longer.
Actually, he's been standing there.
Okay, I just didn't see him. My bad. Whoa.
Sorry.
My
Good morning.
See you now.
So I have a lot of colleagues, young professionals and students who I think suffer from the same phobia, which is that, as we look for more training to do with excerpts and things, people are sort of afraid of ruining their chance to sub with an orchestra by playing for a member of that section or of another section. I'm wondering if you can just speak to that and any advice you might offer to a student or a young professional who, how they can address an email, about such a lesson. How do you make the distinction between I want to play for you because I want to be on the sub list versus I want to play for you because I'm developing? I think that's an important question for youngish people.
Thank you.
I don't know. I would just say if you want to be on the sub list, say, I want to be on the sub list, please hear me. If you move to an area and you want to just maybe let folks know I'm here, write a letter to the personnel manager and just say my name, this is where I'm from, and I do this and I do this. But just be honest in your email. Just say, I want to be on the sub list and I want to play for someone. Please hear me.
I think most orchestras right now are actually going through sub-list auditions. I think that's something that's being very sort of common these days. So what I would do is if you were going to take a lesson to take that sub audition, then I would contact somebody in an email and just say, I'm really interested in getting on the sub list. Can I take a lesson with you, get an idea of my playing and prepare me for the sub audition, or to maybe get on the list? I mean, I would always, if I have the time, I'll always make time to listen to somebody.
Yeah, I would too.
Yeah, be straightforward about what your intentions are. If you want to be on the sub list, just be clear about it. And if you offer to play for someone to be on the sub list, be prepared. Always show your best face. Don't show up asking for work and you're not ready for work. That's the worst. That's terrible. I mean, you just totally lose confidence in that person. It's like, why are you calling me? You're not ready to work. So, just be very clear about what your intentions are when you're doing so. And as far as students wanting to improve, they should not be afraid. They should just put your best foot forward with understanding that you're developing and you're developing, you want to get better, and you're establishing relationships. And I try to develop relationships with younger musicians, and I'll say, if you're in town, call me. If you're in Cleveland, you want to drive to Detroit, call me. We'll set something up. Really, 9 times out of 10, people don't call me, and then I'll see them a year or two later. I'm like, well, how come you didn't call me? And then you get the shoulders up and kind of the bashful thing. It's like, well, I was sincere in what I said. You should take advantage of that opportunity.
All right, well, unfortunately, our time is up for this particular stage, but you guys should all take advantage of the opportunity to snag these guys for any questions that you still have left. And thank you guys very much for coming.